Okay, so basically, where the human dimension is concerned, first thing I want to tell you is that the title of the book, Strength Coach, A Call to Serve, means just that. I feel like I've been put on this earth to serve young people. I feel that that's my calling. I've kind of discovered that over the years, even though what we do is never easy. And if you have high standards and you don't compromise those standards, you're in some bit of conflict every day. And that's pretty much what my career's been. But I'm all about being committed enough to make young people better. And that's what I'm committed to do, and I'm not going to compromise that commitment. And that means I'm here to serve young people, particularly collegiate football players. I'm here to talk about collegiate football today and those people who play the game. So essentially, I think that if you pour yourself into people and you can develop their character, I don't worry about winning, because winning takes care of itself. If you can develop the individuals to have a high level of discipline and spirit, then you have a chance to win. So that's where you got to put your time and effort. You know what? I don't really know that many strength coaches. I don't network much. I'm not out looking for a job every January. I'm just trying to think of how I can pour myself into my program and make it successful. And that's one of the reasons that I just don't know that many people in the profession, even after 28 years. But that's where my focus is, and that's basically why I've been in one place for a long time. I was at Bucknell for 3 years, and I had a great opportunity to go to East Carolina. Was there 10 years, Carolina 10 years, and now back again. And very happy to be where I'm at, because I have a great opportunity to do what I want to do in relationship to developing people in this scenario. And I really have never been concerned with what emblem is on my sweater. Okay, I'm more concerned with what I need to do for young people. Okay, so I'm very passionate about that. That is my passion. So the human dimension, and I'll say this, in competition, the chief incalculable is the human will. What are the commonalities and shortfalls of the collegiate football player relative to character, consistency, and peculiarities? And let me mention those three things again. Character, consistency, and peculiarities. If you focus on those three things and getting those three things in line, I believe you can be successful. And I believe that the people you coach, when they step on the field, they've all got the same thing between their ears with regard to commitment and passion and attitude, that you got a chance to win. And that's why teams who aren't supposed to win sometimes go out and win. I believe that 100%. This year, our score in the fourth quarter was 155 to 62, something like that. And the reason was our team would not quit. They were dedicated enough, they were committed enough, and they basically were passionate enough to play hard to the end of the game. That's all I can ask them to do. That's all I can ask them to do. How can we eliminate human behavior that is counterproductive to winning? How can we nurture and capture the ultimate level of trust and emotional commitment from each individual team member? Most importantly, how do we set and maintain the standard of effort and discipline? And those are the two things that I require. There are two things that I ask athletes to do: show up and be on time, and work as hard as you can possibly work. You give me 100% effort all the time, every time, and everything we do. You would be shocked, and many of you understand how hard it is to get those two things out of 125 people every single day. And if you keep a high standard, you're going to be confronting people. Because somebody's going to come in that door 30 seconds late and think it's okay. Somebody's going to give you 95% and think it's okay. And you got to be ready to confront that if you want to be successful. And I believe very strongly in just those two things. And I tell our team over and over, those are the only two things you got to give me. So I believe extremely strongly in those two things. Because we are quite certain that military organizations have a tremendously high success rate at these specific objectives that I mentioned, how can we mirror those processes? I really believe that. My son is a combat medic. When he graduated from boot camp, and I saw him run down the road with his unit with that Jody chant, and I'm standing out there with 5,000 other people there to see their sons and daughters graduate from boot camp, I can't tell you how hard that hit me to know that he was a different guy than I dropped off at the airport to go to boot camp. It was hard for me to contain myself. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do with young men that I train every day. Every time you stand in front of a group of athletes, you need to think about the words you're about to speak. Your platform is much larger than it feels. So I'll say this as well at this point. Generally speaking, 70% of collegiate football players are from single-parent environments. We know that. The relationship between single-parent families and crime is stronger than the relationship between race and crime, as well as the relationship between low income and crime. I think those are some very important facts to realize. Number one factor beyond race, religion, and education is the fact that these athletes are fatherless. So I think that this is something that we have to realize. You know, we're not professionals in relationship to counseling. So I think that there's a lot that can be done here. Our head football coach during camp last August had our guys stand up and tell their story. 4 of those guys were homeless through high school. That's significant. That's something I may have never known about those athletes. So when they're 30 seconds later, a minute late, or they're not giving me 100% effort, it may go deeper than we realize. And that's something we have to come to the realization of if we in fact want to get 100% out of everybody. And if we want to keep people around where they don't get tested positive for drugs and we got to send them on their way somewhere, or they don't make it academically, or from a social standpoint they get in some kind of problems because they don't understand it. You got to put the time in. As a strength and conditioning coach, you are a mentor, father figure, brother figure, military drill instructor, teacher, counselor, coach, and what I like to say, guru of charismatic rapport. I don't say that quite as much anymore because now summer's mandatory. But when summer wasn't mandatory, you had no choice but to be a guru of charismatic rapport because you weren't holding anything over anybody's head in relationship to having to be there. And so we all know all the different rules and regulations that came down the pipe over the last 2 decades to make our jobs more challenging. I'm just happy that summer is now mandatory. That makes my job a little bit easier. You must demonstrate, and this is very specific to me. Number 1, knowledge. When I go back and we start on Monday with our training program again, what I'm going to do on Sunday night is I'm going to lay out the whole program to these guys, and I'm basically going to tell them every single reason why we're doing every single thing that we do. I've got some guys on a 4-day program, some guys on a 3-day program, some guys have 4 hours of speed and movement and then 4 hours of lifting. Some other guys have 6.5 hours of lifting and 1.5 hours of speed and movement. I got to lay it out there. And I got to tell them what my objectives are, and basically they have to know that I'm not doing any kind of happy stuff. I'm doing things that are specific to football. And everything we do is going to make you a better football player. And at the end, are there any questions? Let me clarify anything that I just told you about what we're going to do for the next 8 weeks. Usually there are no questions. And that's good because basically they're telling me that I believe in what you just put up there, and we know that it's going to be specific to what we do. Number 2, fairness and equity. Now, your football coaches, your head football coach maybe has some favoritism towards certain people. Somebody's late. Somebody didn't work hard. Somebody didn't show up. It's one of your best athletes, one of your most productive athletes. Your head coach maybe doesn't want to give you support there. In my situation, I don't worry about that. I handle everything myself in the weight room. And basically, I want to make sure that all the people that I'm coaching understand how important it is to me. And basically, I'm never going to compromise my principles, and I really don't need the support of the head coach unless it gets down to where it's almost like a war between me and somebody else. Usually I can get those things accomplished without having to go to the head coach. So don't always count on your head coach to fight your battles for you. Make sure that you put some kind of program together where the athletes know that you're the guy. You're the guy. Number 3, a set of uncompromising principles. You must have a plan to demand and enforce. Number 1, 100% accountability. Number 2, 100% effort at all times, which we talked about. The heart of a collegiate football player is deep water indeed in 2015. There's a study called the narcissistic epidemic. This personality disorder has more than doubled in the past 10 years. These athletes that you spend every waking hour with can be viewed as narcissistic, self-entitled, troubled, resistant to authority, distracted, and let's not forget, medicated. The standard you set may be a demand for what I call wholeheartedness. And that's basically the word that I'm going to use this off season is, I need your whole heart into this. If I'm not mistaken, the word heart in the Bible is mentioned 365 times, which is kind of coincidental. So wholeheartedness is not about what we do, it's ultimately who we are. And if you heard the presentations, the motivational talks that Marcus Luttrell's been doing across the country, that's one of the things that he always says about the Navy SEALs. What they learn and how they develop matters, but who they are matters more. And it's not about what we do, it's who we are. And that's basically the same attitude that we want our collegiate football players to adopt, because we want them to understand the culture. Confidence is born of demonstrated ability, so try to place your athletes in situations where they can gain confidence. I think that's very important. Be a great role model to the athletes you coach. Lead from the front, demonstrate toughness, but be humble. Athletes respect your experiences, but need to feel your presence. Lift them up whenever possible. So every day what I try to do is I try to think about lifting at least one person up. I'm going to target my troubled individuals. And those troubled individuals are going to meet with me about 2 to 3 times a week privately in my office until they get to know me better, I get to know them better, I can get to the root of their problems and what their struggles are, and I can help them to be successful. I don't choose to embarrass them in front of the rest of the team because they don't react well to that, because they really don't know how to react to it sometimes. And I've made mistakes over the years. But with 28 years as a head strength and conditioning coach, I'm just trying to pass on maybe just a little bit of wisdom to you in relationship to how to deal with people so that you can get everybody on your team on the same page at all times. Be vocal when you get what you want. Some of these men have seldom heard frequent positive reinforcement from a male figure. There are specific aspects of engagement whereby you can be impactful and develop a mentality. So basically what I'm talking about here, the first thing would be authenticity. Who we are as a football team, why we take pride in wearing purple and gold, what's the identity, what's the tradition? Do we have a tradition at East Carolina? What is it? Well, East Carolina's had a great tradition with regard to strength and conditioning program. All the strength coaches, going back to Mike Gentry, did a great job at East Carolina with the strength and conditioning program as far as I'm concerned. Our tradition there is that we have to be overachievers. I don't get 4- and 5-star guys. I get 1-, 2-, and 3-star guys. And what I tell them is within 2 years, I'm going to add 2 stars to your resume, which stars don't mean anything to me anyway. But anyway, I kind of use that. And I tell our coaches that. If you bring me a 2-star guy, and that guy is pretty skilled at the game of football, and he's willing to hit somebody in the mouth, I will promise you I can make him better. He will be stronger, he'll be faster, he'll have a great attitude. And so we hang our hat on that at East Carolina. So with regard to authenticity, that's our tradition. It's going to be different wherever you are. But you have to have something to hang your hat on, because it brings everybody together to work toward a common goal. Number 2, you can cultivate a resilient spirit. You will not win every game and will always have challenges in your life. So This is something these guys have to learn too. Probably the person that's least resilient to losing is myself. It takes me a lot longer to get over a loss than it does the players. Okay, so that's something I need to check myself on every day when I show up, particularly the day after the game, to make sure that I'm coming across the right way. Because we don't have time to mourn a loss very long. You can cultivate meaningful work. Meaningful work means full speed every rep. We use that as one of our mantras, full speed every rep. And that's a mentality. And so what I require from my coaches, as we're all out on the floor, and I believe everybody needs to be on the floor at all times, including myself, is if you're watching 2 racks, just make sure that everybody's giving me 100% effort on every rep. If it's an absolute speed day, once we get through the drilling, we want to make sure that they're giving us 100% effort on every rep, on every sprint. If we're conditioning, same type of thing, really depends on what type of conditioning it is. Number 4, you can cultivate team chemistry, and that is identify leadership figures and teach them how to lead. Attitude and mentality are daily quests. You must find ways to mold and improve team chemistry. You're with the athletes year-round. Sometimes you might have to scream. Most of the time you just have to be smart. I know guys that coach who scream the entire 2 hours that the athletes are in the building. That's fine if that's your style. Okay? I'd kind of rather be smart at times, and no matter what I do, I know I'm going to have to scream at least a few times a day at somebody. Okay, so I kind of save that for certain moments. Because if you scream all the time, when you decide that something's really important, that maybe it doesn't have quite as much impact. I want my athletes to think I'm the smartest strength coach in the country. That's more important to me. What is team chemistry? Today's collegiate athlete wants to be noticed. They are not satisfied with ordinary recognition even if they haven't earned it. And individualism is still there, and sometimes I'll have guys walk in the weight room and they got some kind of Disney World cartoon socks on. I guess that are popular now. I don't want those types of socks, okay? I want everybody to look the same. I don't want a bandana that's not issued. There is no individualism. Everybody needs to look the same when they come in the building. We don't wear earrings in the weight room in our program or jewelry. That's just something that we do, okay? Because I think the little things are very important. Today's cultural messaging says that an ordinary life is a meaningless life. Obviously, with social media, we have to consider all these types of things now. They get a steady diet of reality TV, celebrity culture, and unsupervised social media. Well, we've started to supervise it because it's necessary. They think I'm only as good as the number of likes I get on Facebook. They use the celebrity culture as a yardstick, and sometimes they use that yardstick, and basically what that yardstick tells them is they're pretty small. And that's not good either. And also grandiosity, entitlement, and admiration as the standard. There's been some other research done of hit songs over 3 decades that determined there's a significant trend toward narcissism and hostility in the music that we listen to. And I say we because I listen to it every day. And I like music. I like all kinds of music. I play music in the weight room all the time because I need it. Our natural reaction to perceived narcissism is contempt, anger, and judgment. So I can't even tell you how many times I said, hey, you haven't paid the price and you're not entitled to jack. That's been my attitude the whole time. Recently, over the last few months, I've been reading some other data. I've been considering the fact that we have 70% of fatherless football players on our football team. And basically, people don't understand that behaviors that include grandiosity, a need for admiration, and a lack of empathy are sometimes underpinned by shame. And I think that's a good point that we need to realize. And they'll probably say, oh, Coach Connors, you're getting older, you're getting soft. No, I'm just trying to get a little bit smarter. Shame is many times the cause of these behaviors and not the cure. So I think that that's an important point for us to realize. So the answer in that particular instance would be not to shame them into a sense of being individually ordinary. The answer is that they must learn as a team together that they can and will be extraordinary. Well, how do you do that? Well, you know what? I'm not sure, but I'm brainstorming right now to try to figure it out. How can I make everybody feel extraordinary? You know what? I think Oregon's done a great job of that, but they got a lot of money. I just went and visited Alabama's facility. Hey, they got a lot of money too. They got a lot of bling up in there. You know, maybe you're not getting the reps that you want on the field, but man, you feel great just being part of that deal because you're at Alabama, and Alabama's uniforms are traditional. But Oregon has all kinds of different combination of uniforms. But I think all those people in that program are probably feeling to some extent that they're extraordinary. I have to find a way to make my guys feel extraordinary at East Carolina. And so that's what I'm thinking about that I need to do. Talk a little bit about conditioning. And again, these are just excerpts from the book. Conditioning is a mentality. Conditioning is a discipline. Conditioning standards establish a sense of authority and standard of membership. They precede mental toughness. Military organizations use standards of tolerance for a reason. Don't succumb to the soft mentality that has infected our youth. Keep it safe, but keep it tough, and provide meaning behind your methods. So I'll say this about conditioning, and I really believe that it is a standard of membership. Back in the 90s when I was at East Carolina, I had some great leaders as part of my senior classes, and essentially we ran 10 300s around the field in 30 seconds, with 30 seconds rest in 55 seconds for skill, 60 for mids, and 65 for line. And if you ever try to run 10 300s with 30 seconds rest, I will promise you it's going to hurt. It wasn't me that pushed that to that level. You say, oh, well, what does that have to do with football? It has maybe nothing to do with football, but it has a lot to do with mental toughness and attitude and the belief that ain't nobody out there doing what we're doing, and when we get in the fourth quarter, ain't nobody going to be in better shape than us. That's what that has to do with. And whatever you make it, it doesn't have to be through you. Make it whatever you want to make it. But it's got to be something that promotes mental toughness and a high level of conditioning, in my opinion, because these guys have to know where their pain threshold is collectively. And so if a guy was on number 7, the guys that already made it the week before, they had already become coaches, and they were out there pushing them and coaching them with a different color t-shirt around the field until we had everybody make it. So that was our conditioning standard at that point. Could the guys I'm coaching right now do that? No. They couldn't do it because they don't have that level of leadership. I'm not going to even try to make them go there because when I went to 6, it was a team that pushed it to 8, and when a freshman came in and made 8, it was a team that pushed it to 10. Coach, we can't have a freshman come in here and make 8 of these. We got to make it 10 now. I'm fine with it. Go ahead. And during those times, we had such a strong form of leadership that those were the guys that enforced the discipline. My job was really easy. It's just the passion that we had for the program and the fact that how much they valued mental toughness. Simple as that. And I believe if you can replicate that, you can win games. That's what I believe. Right now, in relationship to summer, we have 15 things that you have to accomplish to make Ironman of summer. And then I put your name up on a plaque that's there forever. This summer we had 27 guys make it. 6 of the 15 things were conditioning oriented. For instance, one of them was you got a weighted vest, you got to sprint up the stadium 105 steps, you got to get back down here, and within 2 minutes you're going again. You got to do 12 of those, and at the end you got to piggyback somebody to the top that's the same weight as you. That's one of the things they had to do. So 6 things conditioning-wise. Ordinary people achieve extraordinary things every day. Don't forget that, and never let your athletes forget that. You are probably an ordinary coach, just like me. Do something extraordinary. Find a way. And I'll say this here, as a coach, you can be extraordinary. I believe that everybody can be extraordinary. Identify your weaknesses and seek mentors in those areas. find the best mentor. The best mentor I've ever found in relationship to speed development. I spent a lot of time with Lauren Seagrave back in the 90s, but I met a guy named Jeff Hauser who coaches at Duke. And as far as I'm concerned, he's the most ingenious guy that I've met in relationship to speed development, particularly acceleration. And we developed a whole system of acceleration drills that have really helped me over the years to where I've got 34 guys right now that run a sub 4.640 indoor. And I know we have good team speed. So I believe in that. And that's because I just basically had the energy to seek out somebody who's a lot smarter than me and learn something that I think could make me better, maybe somehow make me extraordinary as a coach. So that's the advice that I would give you there. Collegiate coaching is a dues-paying business. The most effective method of advancement is a relentless work ethic combined with a willingness to meet people who can facilitate your strengths. So when you go interview for a job, make sure that you're talking to people who are willing to facilitate your strengths. What are my strengths? I have an emphasis on speed, so I need a place to run. At East Carolina, I've got a 60-yard, 5-lane track indoors. They let me buy 5 run rockets for each lane. Whatever I wanted to purchase for speed development, they allowed me to do it. That's important to me. In-season conditioning is important to me, so I needed to work for a head coach that believed in in-season conditioning. Support toward maintaining team discipline. Again, I'll tell you that I handle that myself. And basically, what I need to know is when I get in a situation where we've tried everything with this guy, are we going to fish or are we going to cut bait? And my head coach will support me there. Strength and conditioning coaches have the opportunity to gain insight about the inner qualities of a team from sheer time spent among the players. The chemistry of a team is a great predictor. You're right in the middle of this. You have a tremendous opportunity to impact team chemistry. You ought to feel great about that. You ought to be excited as hell to go to work every day because you can impact so many people. Momentum is very important. If a team can capture a few significant victories early in the season, it is vital to strategize on taking advantage of the momentum and positive spirit taken from winning. At this point, I would mention 2 things which are the hallmarks of the Marine Corps, and that is discipline and spirit. I believe you need those 2 things in your program, and I wrote in my book probably about 5-6 pages about that. Spirit is the vital principle or animating force believed to be within human beings. So that all comes back to the human will that we're talking about and the human dimension. Positive energy that facilitated optimum performance and overachievement. That's what it is to me in the East Carolina program. And we can go back to when we got the National SB Spirit Award back in 1999. We went down to beat South Carolina. We had a hurricane in Greenville, in eastern North Carolina, and basically wiped out the whole area. And we couldn't even come home, so we spent a week down in South Carolina without any clothes or anything. Trained a guy at Gold's Gym, and guess who we had to play the next week? We had to play Miami, who was stacked. Ed Reed, among a whole list of celebrity players, and basically had to play them at NC State Stadium and came back and won that game. That was all about spirit. Believe me, all about spirit. So I really believe in that. As far as discipline is concerned, we have another mantra: one way, pirate way, the only way. We have a way that we do things, and from a discipline standpoint, that's the expectation. There's a tremendous level of power and collective overachievement. Average athletes are willing to grind off the field, can find a level of confidence that becomes a tsunami of desire. The key word is collective. Military principles are very specific because they develop men and save lives. We are in the business of developing men, and we hope to save lives by providing them with principles that perpetuate success. And that's why I use military manuals as a reference for everything that I do, particularly the Marine Corps. I think there's a tremendous amount of knowledge to be gained by studying those principles, and you're going to get ideas that you can apply to your team. If you ever experience a team that becomes a like-minded true brotherhood, you will know you have been a part of something special. Like-mindedness yields unity of purpose. It must be built from the ground up. Sometimes problem people have to be eliminated to maintain that. We all know this. As a coach, you must be the right voice. Wrong voices can poison the water fast. Even if your program is hanging on the last string, be the right voice. I think this is really important. So basically what we want to do is we want to make sure that we keep it positive in the weight room. I've been involved in a program where the wheels came off. The head coach is in the process of getting fired. Now, you can become a locker room lawyer yourself and put the blame on everybody else but you, or you can become the right voice and keep it positive, hang in there, and hope for the best. In my incidents, I think it helped me to keep my job when there was a transition at that point. So I think this is very important as well. Always be the right voice. Try to continually find areas where your program is improving. If the team is not winning, you still need to find ways of winning in the weight room. Self-image is the key to human behavior. Expand the self-image and we expand the possible. Thank you, Zig Ziglar. I've worked for Butch Davis for 4 years, and Butch, of course, was friends with Zig Ziglar. And basically, famous people kind of hang out with famous people, but if you read the things that Zig Ziglar has written, it's all about the self-image, and I think that his writings definitely have value in relationship to what you're trying to do with your young men. I really like this quote from Jimbo Fisher. This was a quote from a presentation he did maybe a couple years ago, maybe a year ago. We have to be able to adapt to the modern player. You can't just say, because I said so, to kids anymore. You have to explain why things are done. Our kids today live in an entitlement culture. They believe it's their right to have things. It's this, it's that, it's what, it's the me society. It's all about what can I do for me? How can we as a coaching staff take all these me guys and make them we guys? This is where the off season comes in. I like the fact that Jimbo Fisher recognizes that this is where the off season comes in. So this should even give you more evidence of the importance of what you do. Again, I remember why I became a coach, and I remember our player development. I remember who they were when they got there and how they evolved into what they became, and I truly believe it's the off-season program and the things you do, in a player development that are critical. This is a quote here from another coach, I think, that was at Winston-Salem State. Most kids in the world, including a lot of kids we get, come from tough backgrounds. They don't feel like they can control the outcome of their life. They feel it's already set and they have to do this or they have to do that. They don't understand that the power of decision-making is the greatest power you can have in your life. And I think that's a great point because it means you control what happens to you. The ability to make decisions is a key thing in life. And I think this is another thing that they have to come to realize that you can convey to them. There's another scripture that I'll throw at you. All scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that a man of God may be perfect, thoroughly finished in all God's work. So basically what's this saying is that we have a responsibility to reprove and correct these young people. And I can't, basically give you anything stronger than that to justify that. But people would rather be patted down the road to mediocrity than corrected to the road to greatness. And so we have to learn how to correct them down the road to greatness. We recruit most of our players in the state of North Carolina. Our high school teachers are ranked 46th in the country in compensation. Greenville, North Carolina, our college town, ranks second in the country for unwed mothers. The challenges might be deeper than we realize. These are important factors. These are things that affect the people that I coach. I have to take these things into consideration and make sure I'm doing everything where these guys can overcome these challenges themselves. Programs are becoming proactive in establishing systems of educating the athlete toward better choices through self-examination. Some schools are advocating peer-oriented programs. So at this point, I will give you my formula in relationship to what we just talked about relative to the human dimension. So in summary, competition is shaped by human nature and is subject to the complexities, inconsistencies, and peculiarities which characterize human behavior. That is a fact. That is something that's going to impact us as coaches, probably at a higher level than anybody else because of the nature of the type of people that we coach and the nature of their backgrounds. And I'm not talking about race. I'm talking about everybody in your program. I know a lot of white people that have a single parent in the home. They've been raised by a single parent. So it doesn't have anything to do with white, black, or anything else. It has to do with being fatherless. Competition is a trial of moral and physical strength and stamina. Human will instilled through leadership is a driving force in the competitive arena. The road to a championship is invariably shaped by human emotions. It is because of the dynamic of human interaction that fortitude, perseverance, boldness, spirit, and other traits not explainable by art or science are so essential to competition. Because of these factors and the nature of today's collegiate player, it is crucial that we have a plan to develop not only physical strength, but strength of character and a positive spirit. That challenge is multiplied by the well-established impact of fatherlessness. This is my summary of what we just talked about. So, what's the plan? This is my plan. This is my specific strategy that I'm going to start with next week. Number one, I'm going to define expectations regarding the development of the vital intangible traits in the program. What are those traits that have to be developed? Number one is accountability. Number two is work ethic. This is nothing new here. Number three is integrity. When you have a chance, ask some of your players to define integrity. See how many guys can actually give you a great definition. Discipline. Positive spirit. Durability and resilience. Mentally and physically. And finally, mental toughness. And remember that conditioning precedes mental toughness. At least that's what I believe. So, with me, it's not always about the right energy system. Okay? I understand that, believe me. Okay, and I you know, I don't have GPS. Basically, what I do is I still want to be out there eyeballing my guys. I think I can still do a great job of that. I don't want to get them thinking about some number that they have to achieve. And what I measure is my best guys that give me 100% every day, my soldiers up in the house, I want to see how they handle it. And if they ain't tired, I don't expect anybody else to be tired. Now, I coached wrestling for a long time, and that sport and what those guys are expected to do, football players don't even come close to that. Well, that's a different energy system, different sport. Well, I guess it is. But a 7-minute match, like if you play a whole football game, 5 to 7 seconds per play, over 3.5 hours, whatever, basically it's one wrestling match. I've seen guys wrestle seven times in one day at the collegiate level to win a tournament without any food in their body, basically. So I believe that with regard to football, that we have to make sure that we're doing enough to make sure we're mentally tough and doing enough to make sure we're in great shape. And I understand the science as well. Secondly, identify individuals who struggle with structure and authority. Who are your guys who struggle with structure and authority? In our program, we probably have 5, 6, 7, 8 guys that I can think of that struggle at times. Are they bad kids? No, they're not bad kids. Do I want to keep them around? Yeah, because some of them could be really good football players. But I got to invest in these guys if I'm going to get them where I need them to be. And I got to invest big time every day. So I'm all about observing their behavior from the time they come in to the time they leave, and making sure that I schedule times to meet with them so that I can impact their attitude and they can finally come around over a period of time. What's the biggest challenge that you face in the collegiate setting with regard to attitude? In my opinion, is playing time. If somebody's not getting playing time, they ain't happy. They come in, they basically foresee themselves in a certain role. Sometimes it doesn't work out because they get out-recruited. And basically, you got to keep those guys in the boat. They're not going anywhere. So you got to make sure they don't become locker room lawyers. So you got to find some way to make those guys feel valuable if you want to maintain the highest level of team morale. That's what I believe there. So develop a one-on-one educational, male-driven program specific to their needs. And I'm sorry I say male-driven program. Can females be effective as well? I'm sure they can, but these guys weren't missing mama. They were missing daddy. They need a male mentor. And sometimes you're that guy. Might be the head coach. Our head coach does a tremendous job of that. I want to be that guy too. Number 3, never ever compromise the rules you establish relative to your program and your facility. Consequences must be equally applied across the board. Be relentless and fanatical. Those are the 2 words I like to live by. And here's what I say about that. I've never been a big guy. You know, I played DB in college. I competed in the 181-pound class in powerlifting. I'm 5'9.5" on a good day. But I will promise you this. Everybody in that room knows that I'm willing to die for my principles. And I'm not exaggerating that. And I'll get under somebody's nose in a heartbeat if that's what I need to do. But they're going to know that these principles up in this house, they don't get compromised. And you need to make sure that you take care of that part of it as well. Number 4, always recognize and compliment favorable behavior and accomplishment, particularly with troubled individuals. Give them that fatherly recognition every chance you can. And number 5, find ways to enable the team to feel and believe that they are collectively extraordinary. Testing and evaluation, we have testing teams. So at the end of our winter program, we have a draft. We have 7 or 8 teams. It's highly competitive, and everybody gets recognized. Even the guys that are injured, let's say they have a leg injury, they can still contribute with the other tests that they're able to do if it's in the top 6 of their team. So we have a point system for that. We have the Ironmen of summer. We give a Beast of the Week award in the summer. We give Most Improved each week in the summer. I'm going to find every way that I can to recognize these guys. We have a lot of tangible awards that we give them that they can keep.